This is my public service announcement. I'm tired of people that say they can't volunteer.
Yeah.
You know, I can think of so much time in my life where I'm doing nothing.
Right.
I could just be sitting around doing nothing. And you don't have to volunteer for a week like I'm doing. You volunteer for
Sure.
an hour, a half hour, just anything. You got to give back. People have. I've never been in a position where I needed somebody to volunteer to help me, but people have helped me throughout my life, and there's no different. If you're helping a friend, you're volunteering to help them. So
Sure.
why not just volunteer in general?
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Courtney Post, and this is Let's Vet Together by Suveto, a show where we'll be highlighting stories of growth, ownership, and well-being in the veterinary industry and having real conversations about how we can make veterinary medicine better for everyone. If this is your first time listening, welcome. We're glad you're here. If you've already been a part of our community, make sure to follow us on whatever platform you're listening from and give us a review to let us know how we're doing. We really appreciate you for coming back. Welcome to the Let's Vet Together podcast. Today, I am super excited to be chatting with Joe Listo, a friend and colleague here at Suveto. And Joe, before we really dive into the bulk of our conversation today, which is probably one of the most exciting conversations or excited conversations I am ready to have about the importance of volunteering and what that's brought to your life, I'd love for you to introduce yourself and share maybe a local or homemade treat that you've brought today to share a little bit about yourself with our listeners.
Okay. Well, good morning. I'm Joe Listo, and I am a senior HR business partner, one of the two at Suveto. I've been in veterinary industry close to 25 years, primarily in HR. And as far as a local treat, I actually do have some blueberry crumb cake that my wife made. I didn't have a chance to go out this morning, but this works for me because that's
Why
breakfast.
would you ever have to go out when you have homemade blueberry crumb cake in your
I
kitchen?
don't have to. And I mean, I'm in an area where there's plenty of good restaurants, believe me.
Yeah, you don't need to.
Nope.
Well, shout out to Joe's wife with the homemade blueberry crumb cake. That would go so well with my coffee this morning. I'm
Yeah.
jealous.
Cheers.
Cheers. Yeah, a little sip. So, Joe, I found out through the grapevine that you, for many years, I'd love for you to share how many years, but have been volunteering at Ronald McDonald Camp. And that just last week you were at camp and I was talking to Jen Rusnick, our Chief Human Resource Officer, and she said, yeah, Joe's at camp. He goes every single year. And here at Suveto, we have a real focus on growth, ownership, and well-being. That is our one of our pillars. In fact, we actually have built-in volunteer days for our teammates. And man, that sounds like you really have embraced and embodied that for a long time, not just with your time at Suveto. So can you share with us just a little bit of the background, how long you've been going to camp, how you found Ron
Sure.
McDonald Camp, and just give us a little backstory.
Sure. Well, in my previous veterinary experience, I worked for Dr. Tony DiCarlo, and he was always involved with the Ronald McDonald Camp, and we used to hear about it all the time when he came back from camp. The week after, it's also the same for me. Anybody who goes, the week after camp is a lot of reflection. And every year, he would always tell people from work, if you want to go, just let me know, and we'll get you up there. I waited until my daughter was, I think it was preschool. So she was probably 4. And once she was in preschool, then I knew we had somebody to watch, and I didn't have to worry about leaving home because my wife would always be there when Tessa returned. And I've been going ever since. My daughter's 23 now, so I'm either going 17 or 18 years in a row now. And with Dr. DiCarlo, he had gone, he was just under 30 years. He just finally stopped going. And I spoke to him recently after camp this week, and I kind of got the feeling that I don't know if he was alluding to it, but I think he might be going back
Yeah.
because I'm telling you, once you go, you're hooked. And everyone, if they don't know what Ronald McDonald Camp is, it's a camp for children with cancer and their siblings because siblings are just as important. They a lot of time they get forgotten, and everyone has this misconception. Oh, you're going to a camp where the children might be in treatment. It's going to be so sad. This week is anything but sad, and it's probably one of the best weeks for the kids because you're up there. There's you could have anywhere from 150 to 200 campers, and this is a week where they don't have to worry about treatments, hospitals, whatever.
Sure.
It's a week that they can be kids again, and that's the best part about it. And for the counselors, it's a great mental health week because we turn off our cell phones, no computers. It's all about the kids and just diving in.
Amazing. So, Joe, where is the camp? And tell us a little bit, like, set the stage. Are there
Sure.
cabins? Are you in the woods? Are you sleeping in bunks with the kids? Like give us a
Sure.
mental picture of what your week is like.
Well, it's in Greeley, Pennsylvania. That's in the Poconos. We are in the woods. We are in cabins also. There's anywhere from 6 to maybe 12 campers in a cabin, and anywhere from three to four counselors in the cabin. It's a great place. They have a lake, they have a pool, gymnasium. Like this, the rest of the year. I mean, the rest of the summer, it's things like a girls' cheerleading camp or something like that. But it is girls' camp, so it's everything you can think about at a camp. It's up there, and it's just a great time,
Awesome.
And it is a sleepaway camp. That's what I said, and truly, turning off to electronics is the best.
Gosh, that sounds like a mental gift in itself, let
It
alone
is.
the
It is.
interactions that you have with the kids and good, fresh air. So, Joe, how have you prioritized that in your life? So I'm sure in 17 years being I know you, a very involved dad, a really dedicated hard worker professionally. How have you protected your time there that you've prioritized that every single summer? Because I'm sure things have come up or you've had that moment cross your mind of like, gosh, I don't know if I can get to camp this year, or is that what I give up in my time? Because, I find that even personally for me, the things that I volunteer at, life takes over and it's sometimes the easiest thing to remove from your calendar is that
Sure.
volunteer time. So I'd love to hear how you prioritize that and how you've really held that, at the core of a priority for you.
Yeah, I mean, once you're really into it, and I'm being honest, if you go 1 year, unless something happens in your life outside of camp, you're hooked. And I still always mark the second week of August off on my calendar. Whenever I'm talking at the beginning of the year for vacation or anything, that week is off limits. And I'm sorry, repeat the question. I had a thought in my head and I just
No,
lost
it's
it.
okay. How have you prioritized that in your life? How have you?
Yeah. No, it it never has been a problem with me because I know how important it is, and it's really enjoyable. And I don't look at it as volunteering, just another week of vacation to me,
That's awesome.
which is nice because I'm very much into the theory of pay it forward. And any way I can, I will. My daughter has grown up seeing that with me, and she's seen Ronald McDonald Camp from a young age. And I think that's may have helped her go into the field she's in because she just got her master's in social work and she wants to concentrate in this area. And this one of the reasons that I said this was the best week at camp, this past one, was not only because I had great campers and great co-counselors, but this was my daughter's first year at camp.
Oh, how
And
amazing. I didn't know that.
yeah, she started this year, and it was was talking to her on Wednesday during the week, still at camp. And I said to her, I go, how do you like camp? And first thing she said was, I hope I get the same girls next year.
Yeah.
So she's hooked, which is great.
That's incredible. So what do you do when you're there? Tell me about your day to day. What's your role?
You wake up at around 7 a.m. They have polar bear swim for anybody who wants to jump in the pool at 7 in the morning before the heat goes on. And this year was the first year that everybody in our cabin wanted to go. Usually I have like one or two to hang back so I can hang back with them and sleep. But you go to there, then you go to breakfast. Then the rest of the morning, there's 2 sessions. They're like an hour and 15 minutes long. And, could be anything. Could be basketball, could be swimming, could be volleyball, could be street hockey, kickball, wiffle ball, go down to the lake and do the boats, anything like that. Then we have lunch. Then you have little cabin time. Then there's 2 more afternoon exercises. You do those. Then there's a little cabin time before dinner. Then we have dinner, come back, relax, probably for about a half hour. And then we have the night activities. Night activities are pretty cool. They had the first night last week, we had a game show, kind of like Jeopardy yet. We had the stands up there and everything. There's a dance in the middle of the week. The dance is pretty cool.
Awesome.
I'm waiting. We're supposed to get, probably by the end of the week, we'll get the pictures that we can see, because we don't take pictures up there. It's all the camp photographer takes pictures. Yeah. So because you never want a picture with a child in it with their name tag on or anything like that. And I have to say that's the only downside of camp, is not the pictures, but the kids, some of them want to keep in touch with you during the year, but we can't.
Oh, really?
Until someone's 18, I cannot have an email conversation with anyone, which I totally understand.
For sure. Now that you say that, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before we go to camp, we we get vetted pretty well. You have to go through a background check, fingerprinted. The FBI checks us out, and you have to make sure, obviously, there's nothing abusive.
Yeah.
But and then it's lights out at 10 p.m. and we always leave a little light on in the cabin. And at 10 p.m., as long as there's still one counselor back at the cabin, from 10 to midnight, you can go back down to the mess hall, and that's where all the counselors, that's where they relax, and you have your nighttime snack. And if anybody really has to get in touch with work, that's the only time you're going to. Yeah, right. And 10 o'clock at night, it's just emails.
Sure.
But the day goes fast, and believe it or not, we get there on Saturday, a day before the kids get there on Sunday, and by the following week, it's over like that. It's amazing how fast the time flies.
Veterinary students, are you ready to take ownership of your future? If so, kickstart your career as a doctor with Harbor Go. Go, or Graduation to Ownership, is an all-new veterinary business fellowship designed to fast-track your growth as a doctor and as a practice leader. Master your clinical skills and learn the intricacies of practice ownership in a 2-year experiential learning journey unlike any other. So whether you do it now or after you listen to this podcast, visit harbor.vet/go and get going toward the veterinary career of your dreams.
So Joe, I hear that you come home from camp and you're talking about it and you prioritize it every year, but throughout the year, both personally and professionally, what has that experience done to shape, different aspects of your personal or professional life? Do you ever find yourself reflecting back to your time there, or lessons learned, or kids that have impacted you throughout the year?
Oh, absolutely. The kids are phenomenal, and they deal with their situation so much better than adults do. And listening to them talk to each other is pretty wild, because if they have the same type of cancer, but they're either older or younger, if one of them's getting worried, they're like, well, this is what you have to expect, and this is what happens, so don't worry. And I mean, the way people are so open about it is pretty wild. Now, to me, one of the biggest things I've learned at camp that I really need in well, I do it in HR. What I mean is,
Sure.
it's really a quality that you really need in HR. Is I learned up there to always listen, always watch people's nonverbals, and I'm definitely a more nonverbal than verbal person, and always stay engaged with the person. Now, bringing that back to my professional life, that works hand in hand, because any type of situation I have, I really have to listen to what they're talking about so that I get the facts. I also have to realize, one of my favorite expressions is, your perspective is your reality and my perspective is my reality. So whenever I'm talking to someone, I have to listen, try to put myself into their position, and then make a decision. We go through this at camp all the time, because you don't know, like, what these campers are dealing with during the year. You can only imagine. And certain situations where normally you might get irritated, you don't. And it's not that you're feeling sorry for someone. You're saying to yourself, oh, wait, okay, I can understand why that is happening. So those two go hand in hand. And I think that away from personally, camp, absolutely, and I have no problem saying this, has made me a better husband, father, and person in general.
Incredible. It's incredible the type of impact that 1 week a year can have on your
Oh,
life.
it's amazing. And we still, there are things with the camp that we do throughout the year. I
Sure.
think that's one of the, where my daughter's first taste of it was, she might have been in 8th grade or maybe a freshman in high school. And that was the first time I took her to the house in Philadelphia. And you go there to cook for the families, so they have home cooked meals. And I think that probably was her first taste of it. And she got the bug from that.
Yeah. So Joe, you work in HR, you've been in the veterinary profession for a long time. What have you been able to coach, like, your teammates? You work hand in hand with incredible hospital teams, of the collaboration that you've seen at Ronald McDonald Camp, and your daughter being, her being kind of indoctrinated into that
Mhm.
culture and that community of compassion. How have you been able to adapt that to some of the work that you do with veterinary teams? I know that, obviously you feel that in your personal life, but
Right.
you are in this really unique position that you work so closely with veterinary teams. Curious how that has correlated.
I'll give you a little, this is a little sidebar to that, but it'll start me off. It was probably one of the first couple years that I went, and I came back, and somebody came into my office with some inane complaint. It was like ridiculous. And I use this a lot. If they come to me right after I've been to camp and they know I've been to camp, I look at them and I go, I'm sorry, I wasn't here last week. You know where I was, right? And then all of a sudden their wheels start turning, and I go, and you know what I was dealing with, right? And they're going, yeah. And I go, and this is what you're worried about? I said, let's
Mhm.
put it in perspective here.
Yeah.
I don't get into the, life or death or anything like that. I never talk about death, because all these kids, they're survivors, and that's how I like to look at it. But when you tell someone, if it's a real problem, it's a real problem. If it's not, and you can solve it, usually when I say that to someone, they walk away, they think about what the issue was, and they get it resolved on their own.
It's a great check-in. It's a
You
great
know,
check-in. And actually, gosh, what a great lesson to all volunteer work, right? When you can
yeah,
stop and think about what you're doing or who you're helping or what impact you're making in the moments that seem like really big deals, or
yeah,
something that is like, a crisis in the workplace or professionally, it just gives you that moment to, like, check in and say, wait, what are others
yeah.
facing that are
Well,
just, it's so much more,
it's
of a
pretty
battle
funny.
than, like, currently, like, who left the old Keurig cup, like, in the coffee
Yeah,
maker still
yeah.
instead of throwing it
That's what I'm
away.
saying. Inane things. And the day before the campers get there, the counselors all talk. And one of the things we do every year, like this year, one of the counselors I've known for years, the other one was first time that I've met him, but we always do a big deal, no big deal. And you would make a list and say, each of the counselors, what do you feel is a big deal if this happens? And, usually we don't have much on the big deal.
Yeah.
Everything's no big deal. It's like anything, safety is always a big deal. But the only thing we always say is we all have to have each other's back and we have to work as a team. That's one thing that's always on the big deal side. And this year you're talking about teamwork, and I work with people in teamwork all the time. I had a camper this year. On Friday night before we leave Saturday, we talk to all the guys, and, we were in our cabin, and it's like, how was your week? And he goes, when I showed up on Sunday, I wanted nothing to do with anybody in the cabin because he didn't know any of us and we didn't know him. And now he goes, and here it is Friday, and I don't feel like going home, and I've made lifelong friends. Now, for him to say that with the counselors, that was really touching. And we had a cabin of very diverse kids.
Yeah.
From day one, they all got along. They all, whether they agreed with what the other person was saying or not, they all got along. They all had each other's back. They all did things as a group, and they made sure that everybody in that cabin had a good week. And to me, that's the same way it worked. You want to make sure that everyone on your team wants to go to work, wants to be there, and wants to contribute.
Feels included, feels safe, feels
seen. That's inclusion is the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a big deal. On the big deal,
absolutely.
No big deal. Man, that's the big deal.
Yeah. And it is true. You always got to watch, for lack of better terms, the weakest link or the person that doesn't seem engaged. And you got to go after them. And I don't mean in a bad way. You got to help them so that you assimilate them into the group. And the more people realize that we're all in this together for the same reason, then teams work better.
Absolutely. I have to ask you, Joe. I know you said this prior to us, kind of recording, that this is a joyful week for you. You go to camp, and it is fun. It's rewarding. You don't think about the realities of the children that are there at camp.
Mm-hmm.
But I have to imagine at some point in your year, and I really do wonder about this, and you can tell me I'm wrong, but that the reality of their situation does at some point, give you a moment to pause and reflect, and you think about them and you worry about them and you wonder, how they are in their health. And that makes me really think about our veterinary professionals too, that there is a lot of joy in the workplace, but there's also a lot of reality. And so how have you been able to either understand or relate to some of the compassion fatigue or the feelings that could lead to that just by, with having this experience? How has that, been able to put you in a place of a little bit more understanding for our veterinary professionals? Just curious about that.
I totally understand compassion fatigue in the veterinary industry, and compassion fatigue can be anywhere. I've had a number of campers that left a mark on my life that have passed. And, it's a trying time. Just, it's a family member to me. And when they pass, that's how I feel about it. I've gone to a number of funerals, and I don't think about the funeral when I think about these kids. I think about the time I had with them in camp, and luckily my good side way outweighs the sad side. And it really is the same with us, with the compassion fatigue. I totally understand it.
Right.
And if you get a grip and don't think about the sadness, or think about what it is that is giving you this fatigue, and you go back and just look at the good things, it always helps to reflect on the good things. And yes, I do think about the kids throughout the year. Actually, one of my he actually was the first camper that introduced himself to me on my first year. He now works um, for companies that repair the MRI machines. And it was pretty funny. About 5 years ago, he walked into the hospital I was working
Oh,
at.
come on.
No, and I was like, and I took a picture. Now I could took a picture. We put it online. And I was like, you never know who you're going to bump into, which is cool. And then I also, when I was up at camp, we didn't do it this year. Things got a little different with COVID, but I used to. My activity that I did with the kids was golf. And what we used to do was on the Thursday up there, we'd take the kids out to a real golf course and they would shoot 9 holes. And one of the kids that was with me, I'd known him probably about 6 or 7 years at camp because he was in my cabin a couple of times, but he was also in golf with me every year. I remember his last year at camp, he was having a great time and you never would have known it. But 2 months later, he was gone. And I went to his funeral and I remember meeting his sister and she's looking and she's going, I know you from somewhere. And she's like, wait, golf. And then she's like, oh, I didn't see the camp shirt on. And, it just puts things in perspective. And here I am at his funeral and it wasn't a sad thing. Everybody was celebrating because this kid left a mark. Yeah. And, people still talk about him. A lot of the kids, they leave a mark on us big time. That's the other thing. On Wednesday afternoon, every year at camp, we go down to the lake and it's a reflection on people that may have passed in the prior year or anybody that in your family who may have passed. And what I do every year that I've been up there is I'll take a rock from around the lake and in permanent ink, you write the name of whoever it is and you throw it in the lake. Yeah. So this year, about 4 years ago, my father-in-law he died after a car accident. And now my mother-in-law just died a couple months ago. So now my daughter's there. So I gave her a rock and I put her grandfather on one side and her grandmother on the other side. And she goes, what's this for? And I told her, I said, I went through a list of names. I said, they're all in the lake. Yeah. I said, so if you throw this in the lake, everybody's together. And if you take any bad situation and look at, the silver lining of it all, you can get around anything bad.
It's amazing how much this experience has given you perspective in all aspects of your life. And that's
crazy.
What
it's crazy.
So many of us need in those moments is a little bit of perspective, a little bit of fun. Fun goes a long way. Fun goes a long way. And impacting other people's lives. Like just the power of that is, that camper of yours, his sister recognized you from really a fun moment in her life and his life. And you're forever ingrained in their memory of that, Joe. And I have to imagine that has as much impact on you as it does her.
It absolutely does. And I'm tired of this is my public service announcement. I'm tired of people that say they can't volunteer. Yeah. I can think of so much time in my life where I'm doing nothing.
Right.
I could just be sitting around doing nothing, and you don't have to volunteer for a week like I'm doing. You volunteer for an hour, a half hour, just anything. You got to give back. I've never been in a position where I needed somebody to volunteer to help me, but people have helped me throughout my life. And there's no different, if you're helping a friend, you're volunteering to help them. So
sure.
Why not just volunteer in general?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So this is your public service announcement that after listening to this podcast, find some way to give back, some way to pay it forward.
Absolutely.
And celebrate that. Imagine the impact that can have not on just your lives, but other people's lives. And Joe, this was super fun. Thank you for agreeing to do this. I have to tell you that I was a summer camp counselor for lots of years. And I would like to find a summer camp that I could volunteer at. This sounds like it's right up my alley. So
there are a bunch of them in the Poconos.
Yeah, future camp volunteers right now through this podcast. It's What an awesome experience. And thank you for sharing it with us. I appreciate
One
it.
other thing that I'll have to say, another quote that I loved, Heather Lowe spoke. She's a speaker, and I've seen her speak a couple times. But the one quote she left me with and stays in my mind is, if you are so into winning the conversation, you stop listening. So always remember, just keep listening and watch what people are doing. And I don't care where you are. If you look at people's expressions on their face, I truly am more of a nonverbal person. And if I see somebody, anything on their face, I always ask them how their day is. And if they want to open up, people that know me know they can talk to me. And, people that I just met are they take a step back saying, wow, somebody actually cares. That's all. If that's the one thing that people get out of this podcast, is just remember, you're not alone. We're not alone, and we all got to work together.
Absolutely. And I can attest to the authenticity of Joe's "How you doing?" line. Every time I interact with you, Joe, every time I see you, I feel seen and heard, and it's a gift, and we should all learn from that example. So
thank you.
So this is now everyone's PSA, double PSA: volunteer and check in with people. Just listen to and listen. Joe, Great. You're the best. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.